Hello, welcome to the show. Today is August 1st, 2025, and welcome to Forward Future Live. We have a phenomenal show for you today. First, we're going to go over some of the news from the week, a quick shot of all the AI trends going on, and then we have two incredible guests. We have Hiten Shaw, who is a serial founder, started a few different companies, including Crazy Egg, Kissmetrics, and then his last startup, Nira, was sold to Dropbox, and now he works on AI products at Dropbox. Also, our second guest, Nico Christie, who's the founder of Fundamental Research. You might have seen him on X. His demo video of his new product, Shortcut, has gone absolutely viral. So we're going to be talking to him about his company and reimagining spreadsheets with AI. So then after that, we'll go over some trending tweets and between guests. So let's get into it. Alex, if you could pull up my screen, thank you. And yeah, Alex will be manning everything behind the scenes. All right, so first piece of news. Meta AI is continuing their recruiting rampage, targeting Mir Muradi's startup Thinking Machines. And yes, you should be calling it Thinky Machines. And so it was reported, according to Wired, Meta approached more than a dozen staffers at Mir Muradi's AI startup to discuss joining its new superintelligence lab. So even though the superintelligence lab has been announced, we have Alexander Wang at the helm, he continues to go after all of the top AI researchers. And if we go into the article a little bit more, we have offers of between 200 and 500 million over a 4-year span. In the first year alone, some staffers were guaranteed to make between 50 and 100 million, sources say. However, Meta Communications Director Andy Stone disputed this report in a statement to Wired. We made offers only to a handful of people at TML. Thinking Machines Labs. And while there was one sizable offer, the details are off. So here's the thing. I believe most people at Thinking Machines Labs actually rebuffed the offer, and they weren't actually able to poach anybody. So there are a few research labs at which the mission seems to be greater than the bag. All right. Next, we have Notebook LM released a major update. Notebook LM, hugely popular amongst a lot of folks. And it essentially takes any type of document and turns it into an audio podcast, usually used for learning. But now they added video. So you can have video overviews. Sorry, just switch my tab. And let me play a little bit of that. So as you can see here, now you have a video overview, you load it with your documents, and it's not only going to have kind of that podcast feel, but you will also get visuals alongside it. So that's what we're seeing here. Okay, let's dive into the world of surrealism. And so, yeah, it creates a visual aspect to your learning experience with Notebook LM. I actually haven't used Notebook LM all that much. Let me know in the comments if you are using it regularly and how. And next, a mystery model appeared on Open Router. I covered it in a video yesterday. If you haven't seen it, check it out. Alex, if you could drop that in the chat, that'd be wonderful. And it is called Horizon Alpha. It is most likely OpenAI's open source model, although it is not confirmed. When you ask it what model you are or who you're created by, it does say OpenAI. It is also not a thinking model. And it has 256K context window. So pretty sizable. It is lightning fast. When I was testing it, it gets about 100 to 130 tokens per second. So extremely fast. But not a thinking model. But of course, we can take this foundation open source model and apply RL to it to get it to think. And next, we have a few funding announcements. First, from Cohere, the makers of the Command series of models, which are pretty fantastic models. I believe they're mostly used for enterprise, but they are projected to have 200 million in revenue, which is relatively small compared to OpenAI, Anthropic, and so on, but still very impressive. And they are also announcing, or at least rumored to be raising more money. Cohere is in talks with investors to raise hundreds of millions of dollars in equity financing at a $6.3 billion valuation before funding. And that would be a 25% increase in its valuation compared to its last equity financing a year ago. So not only is Cohere raising, but according to the New York Times, OpenAI is raising. And they, I believe, are now the highest valued private company. The venture capital round values ChatGPT Maker at $300 billion. And if we scroll down a little bit, we can see they are getting some money by, let's see, the most recent investors: Blackstone, TPG, T. Rowe Price, Fidelity, Founders Fund, Sequoia, Andreessen Horowitz, of course, because they invest in everybody, Coatue, Altimeter, D1, Tiger, and Thrive. They are also raising right as they hit new revenue milestones. So let us take a look at that. So according to the information, OpenAI hits $12 billion in annualized revenue, breaks 700 million ChatGPT weekly active users. That is an insane number, insane growth. 700 million weekly active users. So let's see, they're generating about $1 billion a month compared to 500 million a month at the start of this year. So all of this growth has really been since the beginning of this year, and they just continue to rip. So congratulations to OpenAI, but that's not all. Anthropic as well. Anthropic has to get in on the love. So Anthropic in talks to raise at $170 billion valuation. And it is led by Iconic Capital, reported by Bloomberg. And that would be up from $58 billion from the previous round. that was led by Lightspeed Venture Partners. Now, OpenAI has taken money from essentially everybody. And so there are just a handful of remaining investors that can invest in companies like Cohere and Anthropic. And so nothing seems to be slowing down between the heating up of AI researcher poaching and the talent wars, the increasing revenue amongst what seems to be all of the AI startups out there. And then also all of them are just raising an insane amount of money. So they are just building their war chests for the inevitable infrastructure build out, which we'll cover later in the show, the AI researcher, the talent war, and essentially just the kind of winner take all mentality that a lot of these companies have. So that's the quick news that I wanted to cover today. And now I want to bring in our first guest. So Hiten Shaw is our first guest. As I mentioned, he is a serial founder, started Crazy Egg, started Kissmetrics. His latest one, Nira, sold to Dropbox, and now he's working on AI products at Dropbox. And he was actually the first angel investor in my previous company. So very excited to bring him on. Alex, please bring him on the show.
Hey man. Hey, everyone. How's it going?
Yeah, good to see you, man. That is a really cool sweatshirt. How do I get one of those?
So it's actually this artist named Jack Butcher, and he has this brand called Visualize Value, and he sells merch. I have like all his stuff. He has one that has ZERP on it in all big letters. So maybe I should have worn that one instead of this one, but it's the School of the Internet vibes today. So.
Yeah, that would have been very appropriate with all of the news that I just covered to talk about ZERP again. Yeah, so I'll definitely hit you up for a link there. Okay, so I want to talk to you about a few things today, Hiten. First is the Meta personal superintelligence announcement. I want to read a couple quotes, and then I want to get your thoughts on this. So just for context for everybody watching, earlier this week, Meta put out a note from Zuck, from the Meta team, basically saying, hey, here's kind of what our mission is at the Superintelligence Labs. And they went into a little detail, and there are two quotes that I'm going to read. So first, let's start with this one. This is distinct from others in the industry who believe superintelligence should be directed centrally towards automating all valuable work. Now, just as the context, he's referencing that Meta superintelligence is going to be giving superintelligence to everybody personally. That is their mission now. And then humanity will live on a dole of its output. At Meta, we believe that people pursuing their individual aspirations is how we have always made progress, expanding prosperity, science, health, and culture. This will be increasingly important in the future as well. So this is a direct dig at OpenAI and the other labs who's saying, hey, we're going to run superintelligence, and you will get a piece of it when we feel it is the right time. Their approach is, let's give superintelligence to everybody. Now, obviously, there's a little bit of marketing here, but I'm going to pause. Hiten, what are your thoughts here?
You know, like the whole thing with AI reminds me of, and continues to remind me of, the wars of like iOS, Android, the Windows Phone, Amazon's debacle with their phone. I forgot what it was called. It wasn't Fire. It was something else. Yeah, it was Fire, right? Like they have the Fire tablet, so they have the Fire phone, right? So, well, first of all, I'll say there's a lot of different lenses on this. My favorite is still a friend of mine, Om Malik. He wrote an article breaking down the communications aspect of this, and he had a bunch of questions he asked. So I'll save us from that perspective right now. I would say that overall, these leaders, whether it's the folks at OpenAI, Anthropic, Mark Zuckerberg at Meta, they need to be relevant. Their companies need to be relevant in the future. That's really what this is about. And the more I think about this, I'm like, these are just points of views that are designed to help us as consumers understand who and what company we want to participate with. And I think this is the longer play. And part of that comes from the idea that people believe Apple is more privacy focused. It's more of the secure ecosystem, while Android is the exact opposite, and it's open, right? So in some ways, if you take all the marketing out of it, this is just strategy. He has to say this because this is what you need to say if you're Meta with all their consumer properties, and then you're competing with the thing that you wish you would have built, which is ChatGPT, because it's taking consumer attention away. So this is more, to me, a game of like, what is the right optics for the market that each company wants to or needs to put out there. I'll give one other example. Mark Zuckerberg has tons of money and cash flow. He has money and cash flow, and that company does, that OpenAI does not. So OpenAI has to talk about big, take over, like AGI, ASI, all this stuff. And I'm not saying Mark Zuckerberg's not talking about that, but he's talking about it with a framing that's supposed to help us fit into the world better and help us feel like they're not going to take it all over and own it all. And then they're controlling us. But if you think about the history of this company, like, there's been narrative shifts constantly. But what the one truth is, they know how to grow and maintain their audience and maintain the billions of people's engagement that they have. We can't forget that. That's where they're coming from. And now all of a sudden this threat showed up that is taking that, has been partially taking that away, and they need it back. That's kind of the way I think about this.
Yeah, and it wasn't too long ago, speaking of kind of perception, that they Meta, right? It was all about VR, AR, and they invested tens and tens of billions of dollars, and then now it's all about artificial intelligence. And so you're right on that point. And I also think, what does personal super intelligence actually mean from a technical perspective? I'm not going to be having super intelligence on my phone. It's still going to be centrally located, most likely in a super data center, as they are building out, right? So what does that actually look like? And that does speak more towards what you're describing, which is this is all kind of a marketing play.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be, though, right? Even what Sam Altman says is a marketing play. What Dario from Anthropic says is a marketing play, because they all need lots of money. They need money, like, to build out the compute and the capacity to do the training and the inference to get us there, and whatever there is. So they all have versions of what there is, but I think we're all in agreement that AI is going to do a lot more than it's doing today for us.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. And like, let's continue on the conversation about Meta, because part of that note that they put out, I actually, my heart sank when I read it. I was extremely disappointed, maybe not so surprised, but let me read this and then get your thoughts. So that said, super intelligence will raise novel safety concerns. We'll need to be rigorous about mitigating these risks and careful about what we choose to open source, I have been such a big proponent of Meta's open source efforts. And when I read that, it did make me sad. It just felt like we were giving up the open source race to China. So I'm going to pause there. Hiten, what were your thoughts when you read that?
It didn't scare me as much as it's probably scared you. And the reason it didn't scare me is because my lens, it still continues to be that these companies are going to do what they believe is best for them, first and foremost, because they are businesses, right? Even OpenAI tried not to be a business, let's just say. But guess what? They're a business too. So, and they're trying to be more of a business with all the changes to the corporate structure that Sam Altman and crew have been trying to sort of, develop and change. And then all the lawsuits and concerns and things like that, whether it's Elon or other folks about the structure, or even Microsoft being like, no, we like this structure, right? Do not change the structure. If you change the structure, hey. And then now, OpenAI going and partnering with Google. So to me, it's like, there's many different sort of levels, layers, perspectives on this. Some of it has to do with what you're saying, which is super geopolitical related stuff. But in some ways, Meta let the cat out of the bag with Llama. Without Llama, how many of these models and how many of these labs would not exist today?
Yeah.
That's a really big question, right? So if you think about it like that, it's more like, hey, I gave you something and it was my choice. It was our choice as Meta to give this to the world. If you read the post about Llama, they're not saying anything super different than what's said here. So my opinion is this is just a hedge And I'm not as afraid about them not contributing or continuing to contribute on the open source side. That's kind of my current take. That being said, I'm not saying they're going to open source everything. Like, obviously that statement implies that they're not, but I think everyone's going to have to open source some decent chunk of what they're doing. Even OpenAI is saying they're going to open source something. They open source Whisper, right, previously. So, but everyone wants to own this. This is like the next big thing. And I just wanted to circle back to your point about VR. My understanding and belief of the VR investment was because Meta does not have a platform. They are products and services on top of
they were
a
burned
platform.
on the phones. Right. They basically were at the behest of Apple and somewhat Android.
So I still think they're going to pursue that and try to win that and get a device out there. And I think with AI, it actually makes that whole business, AR, VR, all that very different over time.
Yeah, I mean, they're going hard on it, right? Because they have like, he talks about glasses all the time, AI glasses, and it's like the two major investments over the last few years of their business converging on this one product. And I heard he's approaching it from two sides. One, what is the simplest glasses that can have AI? So something that you can wear, something that looks like your glasses. And then all the way on the other side, what is the most kind of technologically competent piece of hardware that you're not going to wear every day, all day. And then they're kind of like coming towards the middle on these two products. So it's going to be interesting. Now I want to talk about something you said. You said, they're a business at the end of the day, obviously, right? They're beholden to the board, beholden to the shareholders. And I think actually there was a story a couple of weeks ago from Anthropic where it was leaked that the CEO essentially said, they are all about their morals, their moral compass at Anthropic. And essentially they were like, hey, we actually need to compete. We need to go raise a bunch of money, and it might be from the UAE. So like, at the end of the day, these guys are hyper capitalists and they're going to do whatever it takes to win. That is why they are, sometimes trillion, but certainly multi-billion-dollar companies. But I was disappointed. I know, it does seem like we're throwing our hands up, the US is, on open source AI. And it seems like a lot of these US labs are essentially going to save the frontier to be closed source and then open source maybe previous generations of their models. And it seems like Meta is positioning itself, or at least communicating early, that they're going to be doing that as well.
Yeah. The US is making significant investments in AI. We're still, as of right now, the hotbed of innovation on that side. But China and quite a few other countries actually do care about this. And if you go to China, and I haven't been, but a lot of my friends go there regularly, it's a whole different world out there in terms of how much AI they're actually using on a daily basis, the government in particular, right?
A lot of surveillance AI.
Right. So there's certain technologies they probably already have that are better than us, right, in the US when it comes to some of those things, simply because the more data you have, that surveillance data, the videos, the photos, et cetera, the more you're able to train your AI, right? So I think some of this is sort of, we keep talking about it as open source is the race to win. It might be that data, context, labeling, all these things are actually more of the interesting and useful space right now as AI is still developing, until we get to a point where, like, the labeling, like, for example, the labeling for code. The labeling for code is a very interesting thing. And the reason for that is, that's why they spent so much money. One of the reasons they spent so much money on Scale AI, and they got to see what all the other labs are doing, and they got to understand where everyone's at. And now they have Alexander and other folks out there, and Nat, and all these, like, honestly, like, legends, to be honest, in AI. Like, however way you want to think about it, or there's things about Alexander's management style or Nat or this. That's not the point. The point is that they're getting the people together. It is a US company, right? And they already do have some open source stuff. In fact, some of the more interesting open source things that I forgot the names of them that Meta has put out is not even Llama in my mind. It's actually their technology to identify objects in videos and images. I can't believe I don't know how much impact that's had on the tooling that does that. That's not anything to do with Meta, right? So I think things are developing is where my head is, and every country is making significant investments here. I would argue the investments in the context, the data, the labeling, everything related to training is probably where I would, be digging.
Yeah, I don't think Meta gets its full credit for all of the open source contributions that they've made over the years, non-artificial intelligence open source contributions. So you're right about that, but it does seem a little contradictory. We have the government, the US government, essentially pushing a hard narrative about open source, right? How important open source is. And then almost the same week, we have kind of the number one company in the world, the US based company that is pushing open source, Meta, essentially walking it back a little bit. And it does feel like, right now it's China versus the US for AI. Let's just assume that's the way it is, because kind of is. It does feel like the race is actually open source versus closed source. China is releasing incredible open source models, which we're going to take a look at later in the show, but they are reaching the top 10 models in the world. So I think 3 of the top 10 models in the world right now are open source. And so what do you think about the open versus closed race, the China versus US race? Do you have a bet you'd like to make? Obviously, you're in the US like me. So what are your thoughts?
I don't have a bet to make, but I did want to shed light on one thing that popped in my head. It might veer us in a very interesting direction, and that might be it, but it's this. What if that statement was actually a tactic? If that statement was a tactic, let's just play this out. Who would that statement be designed for? It would likely be designed for the US government. It's basically, if you translate that statement, one perspective on it is, hey, you're going to have to incentivize us to keep this open source thing going the way we are. And if you think about it, Meta has not been in any of those AI announcements last I checked. But
what do you think that incentive would be?
OpenAI has money, subsidies.
Subsidies.
Like why would you not want that if you're Meta? I mean, you look at their balance sheet, they're spending a lot, they're spending billions. And they're spending billions in America. So don't like where's their leverage from it, right? So you have to think about Mark Zuckerberg and his team as some of the best strategists on the planet. There's a few other teams I can say that about, but they're not at the size of Meta. So if you think about it like that, every line should be taken with multiple perspectives to try to understand what's really happening here and why are they saying that. So that's why my fear is a lot lower, because there's translations you can make on who is he speaking to in each and every sense there. Some of it's us as consumers, some of it's us as builders, some of it's the market, some of it's those researchers he's trying to hire. But I think a big piece of it is the government, the US government.
I like conspiracy, Hiten. Yeah.
This is not conspiracy. This is strategy. Like, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, right? I think it's purely strategy, but I'll take the word. That's fine.
Yeah. No, and I'm reading the chat right now. A lot of people are agreeing with you. So yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, obviously, look, we're talking about the smartest people on the planet here. They're out to win. They're cutthroat. They'll do whatever it takes. And so yeah, it's all a play. It's all strategy. I agree. Okay, I want to change topics for a minute. This is something I know you've thought a lot about, which is the future of work. As AI continues to get better, a lot of people out there are afraid of being automated away. I tend to have a much more optimistic view of the future. I believe everybody's going to be much more productive. They can choose to do what they want with their time more so than they can today. There are a lot of historical examples of this. But I really just want to continue talking about it in the hopes that people get more comfortable and more optimistic as well. So first, I wanted to ask you, what group do you fall in? Are you more pessimistic about the future? Do you think there's going to be a, quote, white-collar bloodbath, as the Anthropic CEO Dario mentioned? Or do you think it's going to be more like hyper-productivity per human, and we're going to have a lot more time on our hands, a lot more free time? So what bucket do you fall into, or somewhere in the middle, and why?
You know, one thing I always think about when there's like the potential for change like this, which is actually pretty rare, right? But both of us had, been alive before a lot of the technology that exists today that we have access to, right? Like, I used to ride my bike around my neighborhood quite a bit because there's nothing better to do, just for lack of another explanation, because we didn't have the phones in our pockets. And this is when I was a kid. So when I think about technology, my viewpoint is always from, I had a computer since I was 8 years old. I'm 44 as of yesterday. So that's 36 years with a computer. Thank you. 36 years with a computer. So I just think of it as like, this is yet another shift, and it's going to cause people to be very scared and other people to be very optimistic. And I can at least speak to my experiences because I have a job at a 3,000 plus person company. This is my first job in my life. Before that, I was, only a startup founder. And all I see is the vast majority of people very excited about how it can help them, but not understanding yet how it can actually help them. And so what's going to happen, in my opinion, is that there are the people who understand it are going to teach the people who need to come along for the ride. And then there's going to eventually be a minority of people that might just not want to get there. You could label them as Luddites or whatever word you want to use. I'm not here to do that. But I think there's always a population that feels so stuck, or that we might look at them if we're optimists that, hey, they feel stuck, but they can probably carve out a life for them regardless, right? They just need to make some compromises and things like that, or they need to get on this. It's just like computers. Everyone uses a computer now. We even have them in our pockets. Yeah. This is, to me, bigger than that, but also not any different from how technology gets diffused across society. So when people get dramatic, like the Anthropic CEO or a bunch of other folks out there saying all these things, I always try to think, hey, what is their intention based on what they're working on, more so than what is their knowledge? And I think when I start thinking like that, I'm like, I take the bits that's like, oh, they're biased because of their point of view and the business they're running and the money they want to make and what they, maybe the vision they have. Fine. But then I'm like, wait, on the ground, all I see is people trying to help each other use AI. And that's the truth. So as I think we start seeing certain pockets of markets and things start getting compressed, where people are like, oh, it's taken my job or whatever, they get diffused and they do other things. They learn how to level up, things shift. But I'll share one thing that's just my tip, for lack of a better word, that I think you and I have definitely talked about and align on, is like, you just go from managing humans to managing AI. And everyone becomes a manager in a way that they haven't been able to before. And I think that's a positive thing.
Yeah. So Hiten, I agree. I think one point that I'm going to push back on is that this is just another shift. It does at times. And again, this is through the lens of, I am very optimistic about the future, but this feels like a greater shift and a faster shift, faster diffusion of this technology than we've ever seen. There's going to be pretty dramatic disruption in people's day-to-day, both personal and work. So it just feels like this might be the final shift. I'm a little hesitant to say that, but it really does feel like one of these completely different transformational technologies.
I believe it's transformational for society, and we definitely don't have a proxy for the potential, a proxy that anyone alive understands. So that's what we have to think about too. I'm sure there are people before, like, let's say the last 100 years, before like 1900s, that felt like this about so many different things.
Yeah.
Over a bunch of generations, right? And so again, I'm actually in full agreement with you that this not just feels different, there's so many aspects of it that are different. But then I try to use ChatGPT and it hallucinates. So
So one other thing that you mentioned, I want to actually dig into for a second. You said the vast majority of people who you're interacting with are really excited. Did I hear that correctly?
They're optimistic and they're trying to figure it out. I don't know about excited, but they're trying to figure it out. Yeah, I don't want to say that everyone's excited, but I do want to say that everyone's trying to figure it out. I firmly believe that with everyone I talk to.
What I've noticed is when I speak to folks in the industry, it's pretty binary, although skewed much more towards optimistic. It's either, yeah, this is going to be incredible, or holy s, like we're going to have big problems. Outside of our little bubble, I talk to a lot of people who are either unknowledgeable about it or just like very nervous, not really worried that they're just going to be automated away, but just nervous and not sure how to start. So I kind of see that as well. I don't necessarily see hardcore pessimism outside of our industry. Sometimes I do, more so with the younger generations, by the way. Yeah, it is somewhat optimistic, but a lot of people are still very nervous.
I guess my response to this is just, isn't that expected? We're not good at change, but change happens all around us all the time. And this is like you could you could think about this for a whole year. Just think about what's going to happen with AI, and you wouldn't be done thinking about what could happen with AI if you did that like 24 hours a day, right? It's like one of those things where it's like so many and we have to appreciate that the same thing happened with computers. Like it just kept getting better and better and better and better until you have a computer on your watch, right? And again, I'm not trying to say, oh, AI is the same as these, or it's different, or it's smaller. No, it's much bigger because it permeates everything, right? A computer didn't quite do that initially, but now we have one in our pocket. It's permeated everything, right? So I keep like just thinking about this, and I think to your point, people in tech tend to get very sensationalist because they feel like they understand it, or they feel like it's their job, or they read too much sci-fi. I don't know, right? But when you go out in the world, like for example, there is a gentleman I know that runs one of the biggest like granite gravel companies out there, period. And they make like $1 billion a year or something like that. He was so excited that he could use ChatGPT to write personalized poems to his friends. And he wrote like 60 of them on his like 70th birthday or something like that. And I look at that and I read it. I'm like, yeah, there's like, it's nice, 70% good, 30% slop, but that's fine. It got him so excited that he felt like he could do something he could never do before. And this is a gentleman that's fairly old, business person, not in tech, right? And when I hear just things like that, it's like, we don't know what we're going to do with this stuff. And in tech, we tend to think we have the answer for everyone else. So I'll say that. In tech, we definitely tend to think we have the answers for everyone else, and we really don't.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, that we're inventing this technology, but we don't actually know how it's going to be used. I think there's a million different analogies to that over the years. I mean, the internet, we thought we were just going to take magazines and newspapers and plop them on the web, and that was going to be the use case. But no, it's very different. Okay, so I want to change topics, but slightly on the same topic. You're a parent. I'm a parent. I think about the future of education. I think about my children's education just like all the time. And I'm wondering what skills or what has changed in what you want to teach your kids based on what has happened in the last few years with artificial intelligence. Has kind of your vision of what their schooling looks like and what the skills they need to succeed in the future look like differed from just 3 years ago?
I had a very odd upbringing in the sense of like, I was never told what to do. I was just told, if you get in trouble, I'm your first call. My dad was never my first call when I got in trouble, but that's what he wanted. Then I would call him when I'd get pulled over and get a speeding ticket at 2 a.m. Be like, Dad, I got a speeding ticket, right? Like things like that. So I come from a place of like, and my dad's a physician. I come from a place where since I was 4 years old, he told me, you should be a founder and never work for anyone. That's why this is the first job in my life at 42.
Really?
That's
yes. So interesting.
So my perspective on this is super skewed already, even prior to the AI, which is critical thinking, self-awareness, seeking truth, like these fundamentals that they do not teach you in school anymore. And I like to say anymore because the teachers that I had taught me some of that, but my dad taught me more by observing him than even saying a word. So to me, like, here's what gets me excited. I'll just give a personal thing real quick. So there's this thing here, right? It's like a crochet thing, right? Mm-hmm. And it looks kind of like a succulent plant thing, right? My daughter, it's my favorite thing from yesterday. My daughter gave this to me. It's actually like, these are little coasters.
Yeah.
But it looks like a plant. And she knows I like plants. I got a chocolate mint plant the other day, my first plant at this house I'm in now, new house. And dude, as long as she keeps doing stuff like that, that's super creative, took a bunch of critical thinking, like he likes plants, he needs these coasters, there's all these, like she probably came into my room and saw that I have the, no coasters and there's like the circles, right, on my desk. I'm only sharing that because as a kid or as a parent, I just want to see their creativity. I want to see that they can critically think. I want to make sure that they have self-awareness, and they seek the truth. Yeah. And so I'm just, all the opportunities I get where I'm providing that in ways that they want it, not ways that I want them to have it, if that makes sense. That's all we can do. And AI is such an amazing technology and they're growing up with it, just like I got to grow up with computers. And eventually, well, it was computers. It wasn't the phone. I wanted to say phone. It's like, I didn't grow up with the phone, damn it. They did. And, like I still have a picture of my son when he was like 1 year old when the first iPad came out and he's holding the iPad in his little thing. He's not watching it. Don't worry. He wasn't watching it, but like he was holding it. Right. And like, to me, it's like technology should excite us. And if it scares us, we need to seek the truth and manage it. That's kind of how I think about it. I want to teach my kids that.
Yeah, I agree with almost everything you said. I think the creativity part is really interesting, that when we're in a world in which artificial intelligence can create incredible works and anybody can do that, the noise to signal ratio is going to become skewed, and at a certain point taste is going to become an incredibly valuable personality trait, or maybe not personal, but trait to have. And so fostering that creativity early in life seems like a great way to have great taste later in life. I agree. Curiosity, persistence, creativity. These are the skills I'm thinking about for my kids as well. And kind of dovetailing on that, let's talk about founders. So you're a multi-time founder. You have invested in a lot of founders. You've been in the ecosystem for a long time. What have you seen changing? How has your advice changed for early stage founders over the last couple of years with the complete dominance of artificial intelligence in every aspect of software?
My brother-in-law and I started our companies together, and he, goes back and forth on a few concepts. And he called me the other day, and usually he calls me when he wants my opinion about something in tech, because I'm a little more in tech than he is. He's still in tech too, but I have different perspective being in the Bay Area and things like that. He's asking me a question, right? And right away, I'm like, after he asked me that in his way and wanted to get some data about some companies and some things that I knew, I just said to him, hey, and I have never said this to him before in my life, because he usually does this on his own. I'm like, hey, stop thinking about it. Like, just go build it. Like, just go do the thing. Like stop thinking about it. Like, yeah, you're right. Like, you're right. Whatever. Like, everything you want to hear yes from me, you're going to hear yes from me. Can you just go do it? Because it's good for you to just go do it. Like, can you just go do it now? And then I got a dose of my own medicine 5 minutes later. I can't get into what that was, but he's like, you should go do that too. And I'm like, yeah, okay. Damn it. Anyway, so when I talk to founders these days, which is different than in the past, and it's somewhat nuanced, but not quite, I just want them to feel a greater sense of urgency. And if I can do that on a call around areas that are contextually relevant to them, I'm happy. Like today, that's not how I felt before. Before it was like clarity. Do you know what you're doing? Do you know your customer? We'd get into those things. Those things are still important, but now I think the whole paradigm's flipped. I come from a world where you learn what people need, then you find the best solution you invent the best solution you possibly can for those needs. The world we're in today is actually, you build something, anything, fast, and then you do the next part. And I think that's not how most people have been used to building, which is they need to just ship. And they need to ship and learn instead of learn and then ship.
Yeah. Did you happen to see Google's note? I forgot who wrote it, but they essentially said there's an internal cultural shift at Google going on right now.
Moving with the prototyping.
Right. It's going from a writing first culture to a building first culture, right? Previously, they would write all of their thoughts, they would circulate it, get everybody's agreement. But now it's like, no, just go build the thing. And Aaron Levy says the same thing, Box CEO. Just go build it, show it to me, show me what you have made, and then let's iterate on it quickly. So it seems to reflect exactly what you're describing here.
The best of us always did that, documentation or not. You're just talking about two public companies, one very massive, another not so massive, and probably struggling, to be honest. And they are saying the same thing, but us startup people always knew it's about speed and it's about getting to something real in contact with reality, right? So these folks saying it, if you think about how ZERP impacted these companies, how bloated their product teams are and things, I want to discount what they're saying is what I'm saying, because they had way more bloated processes than us at startups, right? So my viewpoint is even more extreme than theirs. It's not even about prototyping. It's not about lovable. It's not about any of that. I don't care how you do it, but you need to ship then learn. And that's the part that is missing when these folks talk about it, because they're talking about the tooling and the lovable and the bolt and like PMs prototyping all of a sudden. I still haven't prototyped anything as a PM. I'm a PM right now. I haven't prototyped anything as a PM, and I don't plan on it, because the way I have always operated is with speed and urgency. All I'm trying to do is get an engineer unblocked so they can go ship. And now they can ship a lot faster and a lot more. So I got to unblock them a lot more. If unblocking them means I got to create a prototype, awesome. I'm more than happy to do that. But I think we're confusing a bunch of things together here in our excitement about how much you can do with just a few prompts.
Okay. Interesting. Hiten, I want to thank you for joining me today. It's been a pleasure as always. If you want to check out Hiten, his Twitter, Hiten Shaw, so at Hiten Shaw on Twitter, his YouTube. By the way, I've messaged you directly about this. Just the quality and production value that you put into your videos is truly tremendous. So please check out his YouTube. That's at Hiten Show. And Hiten, thank you so much.
I am every time I'm so flattered, and you can see me blush every time you say that, because I think so highly of what you've been able to create, and I knew it when it was nothing, right? We talked a long time ago before you started this. So back at you, super impressive what you've been able to build and all the things that you've been sharing and helping us all learn. So really appreciate you having me as a first guest here.
Thank you. Thank you. Good seeing you. All your links in the chat, so check them out. See you later, Hiten.
Bye.
All right. That was awesome. So now we're going to go over a few pieces of news from the week, a few fun things from Twitter. Alex, first, if you wouldn't mind pulling up the robot doing laundry. All right. So Brett Adcock, the CEO of Figure Robotics, posted this video. He brought a Figure robot home to him. Home with him, I should say, and it is doing his laundry. This is really kind of the dream vision here. I was absolutely blown away when I saw this. Look at the dexterity. His kids are in the background, no fear whatsoever. By the way, Figure, one of the coolest looking robots in my opinion, but just really incredible. Yeah, I see some folks in the comments blown away by this. Me too. I want one of these. I am in the process of trying to get a humanoid robot myself. There's a couple out of China that look really good, but boy, if I could buy one of these Figure robots, I absolutely would. So yeah, so let me ask you guys something. Dishes or laundry? What would you prefer this robot do in your household? For me, it's dishes. I don't mind laundry as much, but having this humanoid robot in my home, being able to help out with chores, it's just such a dream scenario. And I know a lot of people are afraid of this kind of outcome, including my wife, but in my mind, I'm excited. But that's just me. That's my optimist. And so let's move on to the next story. ChatGPT conversations being indexed in Google. This went pretty viral this week. ChatGPT conversations have been by default indexed, unless you have the kind of incognito mode, indexed by Google. So your conversations, even though a lot of users just thought they were private, were showing up in Google search. So here it is from Wave FNX. There are multiple ChatGPT chats indexed on search engines because when sharing, there's an option to make it publicly available for discovery. Makes zero sense as a feature, will probably be removed. And yes, it was, if you can pull up the next one. So I think this is Dane from OpenAI. This is the Chief Information Security Officer. We just removed the feature from ChatGPT app that lets users make their conversations discoverable by search engines such as Google. It was a short-lived experiment to help people discover useful conversations. That is a good use case, but it should be much more proactive. I should have to opt into it versus it just being on by default. And I'm not actually 100% sure if it's on by default, but it seems like a lot of people were confused enough to just have it on and have their conversations indexed. So I would like to see a library of really powerful prompts and use cases. So hopefully they add that. Ultimately, we think this feature introduced too many opportunities for folks to accidentally share things they didn't intend to. So, okay, I think what it is when you create a public link, which I do all the time because I'm sharing links with other people, it becomes crawlable. Okay. Next up, this is a conversation between the chief scientist and a technical fellow at OpenAI chief scientist and technical fellow at OpenAI discussing models developing new ways of thinking. So I'm going to play this clip and I'm going to talk a little bit about it.
The way GPT-4 thinks is quite different. Right? The way its brain works is quite a bit different from how a human brain works. And so we were pursuing this goal of teaching them their own way to think. And it took a while. It took a lot of backfixing, yeah. And it took some insights from a couple of researchers around OpenAI. And eventually we got to a point where it started working and we actually saw these models start coming up with their own ways of thinking. They were still, in English, they were still legible to us, but they were different from where they started. And that was a big moment for us. The way GPT-4 thinks is quite different. Right? The way its brain works is quite a bit different.
So a couple things here. What he's saying is that there are different ways that these models are developing thinking, different from how humans are thinking. And I think that's an interesting concept, but it's not really the first. Anthropic put out a paper, Alex, if you can bring that up, a couple months ago that showed a lot of the ways that the chain of thought and the internal thoughts of these models are actually very different from not only how we thought they would be, but how humans think. And so they have almost like this internal chain of thought in the model that isn't in natural language. They proved that in a couple ways. The ways that they react to jailbreaking is kind of different than we thought it would be. But it really does seem that the best way for these models to develop intelligence is different from how humans develop intelligence. And I can see arguments in both ways. But the reason I say that is because of Move 37 from AlphaGo. When you allow these models to develop their own way of thinking, and in this case, the Move 37 in AlphaGo. So just for those of you who don't know, AlphaGo is a model that was trained with reinforcement learning only to play Go really well. And it beat the best Go players in the world. And it made this Move 37. And it's very famous now because at the time when it was live and they completed Move 37, the announcers, the people who were announcing and kind of watching the show as it goes, they were confused. They thought it was a mistake, but it ended up being such a critical move for the ultimate win at the end of the game. And so it kind of speaks to, you just need to let these models think on their own. Just give them a playground, give them a development environment, give them compute, and let them go. And removing the human from the loop, removing potentially human data from the loop when possible seems like the approach, and that's probably what he's describing there. Okay. The last story I want to cover today is the infrastructure build out that continues amongst all of the top companies. So Christopher Mims, the AI infrastructure build out is so gigantic, listen to this, that in the past 6 months, it contributed more to the growth of the US economy than all of consumer spending, the infrastructure build out alone. And look at the growth curve. So you can see from 2018 to 2019 flat, 19 to 20 flat. Then all of a sudden in 21, we start to get a big build out. But from 23 to 24 and 24 into 25, and now in 25, we are seeing enormous increases in infrastructure build out. So the Magnificent Seven, those are the top 7 tech companies in the world, really accounting for the majority of the market cap of the Fortune 500, spent more than $100 billion on data centers and the like in the past 3 months alone. Alex, if you can scroll down a bit, please. So the infrastructure just continues to go crazy. And here we go. So as a percentage of GDP, spending on AI infra has already exceeded spending on telecom and internet infrastructure from the dot-com boom, and it's still growing. Just to give you a sense. So we covered stories where we're talking about talent wars. We're talking about fundraising of these companies, raising massive rounds at even more massive valuations, and they are investing just as much into the infrastructure build out. So it's such an interesting time to be a part of this. There's so much money here, and we've seen a number of use cases be really successful and return capital to investors. But for the most part, we're still waiting on those returns. So let's see. In an almost too perfect parallel to the bygone age of John D. Rockefeller, Andrew Carnegie, and J.P. Morgan, some of today's power-hungry data centers are actually being put on the sites of former steel mills because of their proximity to energy sources. So yeah, we need energy, we need compute, and it is absolutely insane growth to watch. Give me 1 second, everybody. All right. So those are the stories. Drop some comments. Let me know your thoughts. So let's see. Yuki Arimo, not agree. We need only more base open source models. I agree. China is absolutely crushing it with open source models. We're going to go over many of those open source models released this week. Polygon, for the massive increases in efficiency, the profits made have not been distributed to society. Okay. Murray said the same thing. That's because the massive profits fall into a few hands. I tend to be more optimistic. Obviously, we are seeing that in the short term, but in the long run, I do believe we're going to see a lot of these profits and really just the benefits of artificial intelligence be diffused to everybody. I am hopeful about that. And that's actually the mission of my company, Forward Future. And what we're doing with our videos, what we're doing with our educational content, that is the point. So, yeah. Okay, so we're going to bring our next guest on in just a moment. And yeah, if you have any other comments about what we've covered today, please drop it in the chat. And you know what? Let's just bring Nico on. I'm actually super excited to talk to Nico. So this is Nico Christie, founder of Fundamental Research Labs. You've probably seen his demo video of his new product, Shortcut, absolutely going viral, millions of views on X. It's really an incredible product. I'm excited to talk to him. He's reimagining spreadsheets to be AI native. Nico, please welcome to the show.
Hey, excited to be here. Excited to be with an audience that I get to be technical with, actually, too.
Yeah, absolutely. This folks watching are definitely technical, so feel free to speak about that. We're going to talk about a few things today. We spoke earlier this week on your early work, reaching state-of-the-art results on OS World, and I actually thought at the moment you were telling me about that, I was like, huh, I think I covered OS World. And it turns out I did. I had a video probably over a year ago at this point. But tell us a little bit about yourself, your company, what you do, and then specifically what those early days of building agents in OS World was. Like, what is OS World?
Yeah, absolutely. So quickly, OS World is the hardest benchmarking computer use tasks. Divides up Excel, PowerPoint, email, web search, video editing, photo editing, whatever. But now let's kind of roll back a little bit. About 18 months ago, my co-founders and I shut down our lab at MIT. My co-founder is a former faculty professor for computational neuroscience and was in the EECS and BCS departments there. His life dream, as maniacal as it sounds, is to build the brain, or really to build digital humans. And we decided to go for it. In neuroscience, a lot of the concepts beyond intelligence are not dirty words. So think things like long-term autonomy, collaboration, the way humans do, social emotional experience, even consciousness. Like all of these things exist and are modelable. And they've been modeled for decades to some success or failure. So the first version of the digital humans we created were just friends that could play games with you. And they played Minecraft and Roblox. They were the first autonomous players. We ended up demoing that, getting millions of players, raising 9 million from Eric Schmidt and some big funds. And then we put 1,000 of them together. And I still think this will be the next big paradigm for AI, which is just runtime scaling, agents collaborating to do things that they couldn't otherwise do alone. Pretty avant-garde, sexy, but not obviously valuable yet. I think we're starting to see that now. But then what we wanted to do is, what if we give them access to the computer? We wanted them already to be environment agnostic. They were already on Discord, Slack, tools, and whatever. And then when we were doing this, Anthropic released Kua, right? Their Kua preview, and they hit 20% on OS World. We spent 6 weeks heads down on this and hit 45. It was actually 5.5 weeks. And I can get into how that looked and the challenges and what that sprint entailed. But even there are subcategories, and one of the subcategories is LibreOffice Calc or Excel. And humans at the University of Hong Kong were at 62%, and we had hit 68. So it was the first time we had flirted with superhuman. And even at that point, I still felt it wasn't good enough. We had to reconstrain the environment and learn about what it really took to build good agents, given what we knew at that point. And that's why I built Shortcut as the lead engineer on it.
Okay, so I want to talk about Shortcut in a moment, but you said something, and I want to dive a little bit into that. Consciousness is modelable. Can you explain what you mean by that? That is something that people ask me about all the time. I don't know how to explain what consciousness is truly, and is it modelable? Tell me what you meant by that.
Yeah, sure. And then who I really should pull in is my co-founder Robert across the hall. Consciousness. There's a lot of nonsensical arguments for why it's unmodelable, right? And almost one of them touches on what you're kind of ineffably trying to touch on, which is if you can't describe it, how can you even model it? But this is actually, there are studies spanning actually centuries on what it would look like to model this. Just like the first neural network model was actually modeled by, it was perceptron, using on a submarine using metal, right? Of course, crude, but in principle, something that must be modelable because it absolutely exists, and it's probably not even exclusive to our species, right? So yeah, it's these are dirtier words in AI. They're table stakes. Not that they're solved, but they're part of the everyday discussion in neuroscience.
Do you think modelable means maybe the humanness is modelable if they're able to model or every neuron? I don't know if you saw this maybe 6 months ago, 9 months ago, there was a worm that was modeled completely end to end so that you could actually have a model run the worm's
I did see this
reality. Is that close to what you're describing? And what did you think about that, by the way? I thought that was amazing.
Yeah, no, absolutely incredible. I guess what I really mean is that we should have machines, that have some ability to understand themselves, so have a theory of mind of who they are, where they sit in the place of in the world, and the people around them. And that's actually what makes humans so incredible, not just at a spiritual or philosophical level, but even in terms of collaborating. One of these things is empathy, even. Why do I care how you feel? It's very net positive actually for not destroying the species, and for collaboration. And this is one of the tangents that is also modelable. So yeah, the goal isn't necessarily to build a replica, but it is to build machines that are heavily inspired. And one of these things is self-awareness for sure.
Okay. All right. I want to talk about Shortcut because it just seems like one of those things where you look at it and you're like, of course, this should be a thing. And so Shortcut is the new product out of your company, Fundamental Research Labs. Give a high level description about what Shortcut is and why you built it.
Shortcut is a superhuman Excel agent. It can do almost all Excel work for you. It's also almost a perfect copy of Excel, as in you can do anything you'd want to do on Excel inside Shortcut. It's easier to name the things you can't do than the things you can do. But the goal is to change the most important business software that's ever existed, which is Microsoft Excel. It's about to celebrate its 40th birthday, actually on my birthday this year. And I think it's ripe for a pretty dramatic change.
And why, like, okay, so actually talk about what some of the capabilities are that you've built into Shortcut that are not currently possible with Excel.
Right. So, if you look at the demo, most of the examples I provide are end-to-end tasks. So right now, if you ask Copilot, for example, can you build me a chart over this section? It can do these single and two-step actions, but it does not have 20-minute long-term autonomy, end-to-end accuracy. It does not have a sub-agent architecture that allows it to even self-verify in real time. There are like things that are well-known in building agents that are, for whatever reason, have yet to be accomplished on the Microsoft side of things. And we're going to bring the frontier to spreadsheet users.
Awesome. And Fundamental Research, you guys are the experts at building agents. And so it is your expertise in agents that allow you to be extremely good at building an agent that can accomplish Excel tasks so well. Is that a good way to describe it?
That's exactly right. There's a handful of companies who could really build agents to the way we think we can. The right way to think about it is, there's no model for it in the West, but ByteDance is probably a good way to think about this. ByteDance doesn't even have a unified product theme, right? They have a unified technology theme, which is the recommendation engine, and to build a machine that can recommend things. And then from there, all of these things, may bloom. One of them being Douyin, Reddit, or TikTok, or implied jokes. It's this core technology, and our core technology equivalent is just building incredibly strong agents. And there's a playbook for doing this that we've done now 5 times between Shortcut, Fairies, OS World, Minecraft, Roblox, and actually more than that. But yeah, we've gotten very good at it, and we're trying to systematize it actually.
And so, without sharing any obviously secret sauce, a lot of the videos that I cover on that I make on my channel are about agents. A lot of the folks who watch my videos love building agents. What are some of the top tips that you can give people about building super effective agents? Yeah,
it is an amazing question. It all comes down to, I think, did Karpathy coin it again? It was like context engineering. Like, how do you really expose? It was probably him, right?
He's coining, I see he's coining everything. I don't know how this guy does it.
He DM'd me the day we launched, and he's like, "Can I use it?" And I was like, "Our infra's crashing." I was like, "Try it." He still owes me a response. He's got a gift. He's got a gift at it. But the reason I bring it up is because if you're really good at wrangling these LLM spirits, there's not a lot they can't do. Right? You just have to know how to wrangle them. So like one of these examples is the KV cache hit rate. Like, how well are you caching everything? How often are you invalidating your cache? And when you really try to get into long-term autonomy, that's a massive challenge. But you can be hitting 90% plus KV cache hit rates if you know what you're doing, even over 20 minutes, which makes this scalable.
What there's like a famous saying in computer science: the 2 hardest problems in computer science are invalidating your cache and naming things, right? Isn't that a thing?
Naming things is we're still bad at that part.
The cache invalidation is a crazy computer science problem to this day, and especially I'm guessing with agents where you don't have full control, or exactly what the output's going to be every single time, it becomes even more difficult. Okay, so people should think about the cache.
For sure. Think about tools. Here's a tip for sure. You should own your software, not because it's some virtuous thing you can do. It's because you really want to expose as much of the machine interface as possible to your agents. If you are restricted because you use whatever, we like OpenPyXL as your API, right? Like, now your agent can only write the code they can possibly write over that API. But what if they had the perfect API? And that's where I will not share secret sauce, because I know what it looks like to build the perfect API. But given where CodeGen is now, maybe you should let your agents do what they do best. You shouldn't be using the GUI the way OpenAI does for Operator for half their tasks.
Interesting. Okay, so I want to touch on, by the way, you built essentially a clone of Excel functionality wise. Why did you decide to do that? right? That is a massive task. How long did that take? Why did you decide to do that?
I wish I can say there was like a really brilliant intellectual theory for why I decided to do it. I think it just was obvious to me in a way that I've now feel pretty validated about. But I was someone who, like, if I would touch my mouse, I started in finance before getting into software engineering and then research. But if I would touch my mouse in finance, I would get scolded. Like Excel is so deeply ingrained.
Right.
It's the first thing that makes people feel like, how you probably love Cursor, or like there are things you love and identify about being a programmer. That's actually how a billion people feel about Excel. It's like the one thing that they're technical on, and they know formulas and they know keyboard shortcuts. It's such a part of the spirit of our culture that if you had tried to move everyone off of it by not giving them something that felt almost identical, you'd get so much, like a guttural, like, indigestion towards. So, but I just was clear to me, if I can make it feel like you would never know you weren't in and out of Excel, then you'd be willing to get the performance benefits. And the reason I felt that is look at Cursor, right? Like Cognition launched at the same time as Cursor, right? Or even earlier, or well, depending on when you think about their timelines. But Cognition tried to get everybody to this end state of like long-term autonomy agents. Meanwhile, Cursor is like, let me just take the same thing you use quite literally easily because it's open source VS Code. Let me throw in AI. And now it has perfect feature parity definitionally, and it does better things. And if that could be met, then why would you ever go back, right? So what I wanted to do is let's start with parity. And then let me give you things that Copilot can't do at all, or Gemini can't do, or no one else can do. And then, you might really never go back. There's a couple things in the limit that I can discuss, that are challenges that we're starting to solve. But that was my framework. So maybe it was more sophisticated than I give myself credit for.
So everything is in the browser now. Do you see building native operating system apps?
Yeah, we already have a desktop app.
Oh, forgive me. Okay.
Oh, no. It's not live. I mean,
okay.
Internally. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Very cool. And then the next thing. So you guys are experts at building agents. Did you also have to train your own model for this?
Yeah. I'll get into the sauce here. So we have a pretty big research team that is training models, and by training, you're kind of limited to one, your talent, and two, your cash. So we only recently got into like hardcore post training, as in like we have the former head of RL at AWS AI, the former head of RL at 01, and like early QN's Alibaba's QN models. So we have the world class post training muscle now, and we are actively post training. We are now at this balance point between like, if you want to use frontier models, you have to use frontier closed source models. If you want to post train really good open source models, you have to then hit this threshold where you do feel comfortable at some points swapping them in and out. So we're, it's part of the plan because you need to have better, faster, cheaper models. But also, I want to have a pretty model agnostic architecture, and I'm an internal customer. And if I feel like Opus 4 is, a godsend, I'll use it.
And I'm thinking speed is a big factor for a lot of heavy power users of Excel. And in that world, there's an argument that the model, if you can train a model, an open source model, to live on device, on the edge, everything will be a lot faster. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, for sure. And what's really cool is Excel's not that wide a space, right? Like I met with OpenAI, and like they're trying to do a computer use preview or a computer use model that does, everything, right? Anything you can do in a Linux VM. Excel is much more narrow, and if you own the environment, you can really constrain it for RL pretty well. So it seems quite clear to me that we need to be training models. We need to be serving them even locally on your machine. Serve that even through a desktop app or something, because speed is not just constrained to the models, right? It's also constrained to the browser. Like your browser is slower than a desktop app would be in terms of performance.
Yeah.
So it's very exciting for the same reasons you're thinking,
And so as you're building your own models, as you're also benchmarking Shortcut, how do you think about benchmarks in general? How have you determined whether you're making progress, whether you're better than the average entry-level analyst? What are you thinking about benchmarks?
Yeah, it's the most important thing. Now, let me tell you about benchmarks specifically. The hard part about benchmarks is making a benchmark that successfully mirrors the product experience. And we learned this the hard way. We had a benchmark in Minecraft that was too divorced from like how users really play Minecraft. So it was impressive as like a tech and research thing, but it wasn't like fun. So what we've done is, first of all, I threw away Spreadsheet Bench. It's a stupid benchmark. It's like meant for like, a couple steps of autonomy, and it's like, it's out of distribution, quite frankly. So what I needed to do was get the most in distribution benchmark and like literally talk to customers, use their data. If they were comfortable with me using it, I had to get express permission. And I have init files, golden files, verifiers. And I can say that if I march up this benchmark and I hit this percentage, I'm solving Excel, like for all of the core use cases. And I bucket them into building from scratch, updating in light of new data, overwriting complicated files, starting from existing templates. Like these are the key things that you have to have in your benchmark. And whenever I find something that I feel like we're missing, it gets added to the benchmark. And I think this is actually how Anthropic does this. If you notice, they don't really, Claude Code, they're pretty excited about like the terminal bench or, Sweet Bench Verified. I'm pretty certain that they don't care anymore about like LLM Arena. They don't care about even Sweet Bench. I think they have an internal benchmark that they know if they hill climb against, they got the best coding models in the world. And that's why they do.
Okay. So I want to talk about, so you mentioned a little bit about the ByteDance analogy and how Fundamental Research Labs is more analogous to that versus any other company or structure in the US. Why did you decide to go that way? And do you have any other products that are coming soon that you can kind of hint at?
Yeah. This is our attempt at solving the hardest problem at a research company, which is the fundamental tension between research and product. How do you handle this tension? It probably broke OpenAI, right? Like they're a product company.
In what way?
As in, they refuse to release products that aren't thematically tied to ChatGPT. The research is mostly valuable insofar as it advances ChatGPT. And it's a good problem to have, but it's not a coincidence that Sam Altman became king and most of the researchers left, or most of the early researchers left to Anthropic. That's the kind of DNA. And I'm not sure it was even intentional. I think it's just the result of really brutal tension because researchers want to research and product people want to make money. So you have to have an organizational structure that allows for this tension to be, manageable. So what that looks like is the way we've defined it. And again, very unique is we have, think of it in three prongs. We have research, and research will work the way research does, which is you have 2, 3, 4, 5 researchers working in weird pods, exploring things that may or may not be fruitful. They're plugged into a core tech platform, which is like, think of our systems engineering. How do we build agent frameworks? All the things you need. How do you optimize, the cache? How do you optimize traceability, observability, model agnostic, tools? And we have engineers building this, but then also from there, plugging into that, we have product teams like mine, Shortcut. Like, how do you build, if you have frontier agents, how do you build things? And what you really need is a founder who like intimately understands, is incredibly technical, knows how to build agents, but also is an internal customer of the things you do best. And then when something hits the way Douyin hit for TikTok, it needs to be as unconstrained as possible. I'm going to take on Excel. I'm going to tackle it. And I think it's the white whale. It's been here for 40 years. And I think I can beat it. And I'm going to have all the money and people I need for it. And also, I don't even really want all my researchers on it, right? Like I need parts of the talent stack. I need independent people. Now I need integrations engineers. I need cloud deployment engineers. Like these things take a life of their own the same way TikTok is, would have been one of the biggest companies in the world, but it belongs to ByteDance. So that's how we manage this tension. And I remember we met Vinod when we started the company, and this is something I give him credit for. It's the first thing he said to us was like, how do you manage the research product tension? He's the first investor more or less in OpenAI.
Yeah. And so can you hint at or share any other products like Excel that you're kind of eyeing as future competition or future areas that you want to take on?
Yeah. I wish I can give you a little bit more. Unfortunately, I can't. As far as Shortcut is concerned, I'm going to tackle Excel. We have other apps in the works now, one of which is a very general computer use agent. The other one I'll share a little bit is tackling a lot of reading, actually.
Awesome. So we talked a lot about the future of work on this episode, and that's something that I cover a lot. It's something I talk to my friends a lot about, people in the industry. A lot of people are scared about being automated away. I am certain first-year analysts at investment firms are looking at Shortcut and saying, okay, what am I going to do? So like, first of all, what bucket do you fall in? Do you think we are going to have a white collar bloodbath, or are you more on the optimistic side? And then also, how do you think people, first-year analysts at investment firms, should be looking at Shortcut? Is it a productivity tool? Is it competition for them? How would you tell them to think about this?
Yeah, it's an important question. And I think my thinking is more developed than most people who are responsible for tackling this kind of problem. I'm like an evidence-based capitalist or like a technologist. Like there has never been an example in the history of technology in which reducing the price of the inputs, reduces the overall output quality or quantity. Now, there's also never been a time in which the tools can use themselves, right? So like, how do you tackle this now? Thankfully, we've seen this already 2 years ago in software engineering. Now, try to strip out the confounding variables, right? There is Microsoft record 4 trillion today, right? They announced 9,000 layoffs. Is this because of AI or in spite of it? I would argue it's in spite of it. If you think about where we were 2 years ago with like the inflation rates the interest rates, we were headed into we were in a recession. And if not for AI, we would have a massive depression. I would think so. And my guess is Microsoft would have retrenched way further. Now, like, let's get even more in specific about like where the indigestion will happen because of AI and like job replacement. I do believe, just because we've seen it in software, you show up, and if you're not willing to use the frontier tools, you're at risk of being replaced. The people who are most vulnerable were the 1 to 2 year starting analysts who didn't have the tools or didn't understand how to use the tools and were not nearly as valuable as their contemporaries. The other people who were actually most at risk were the senior engineers who, as a part of their identity, felt that like, linear algebra is not that impressive. I can write my own code. And what happened is 2-3 years of coding, I'm as effective or better than most of them are. And that's the easiest way to get replaced, is to not use the strongest tools available to you. I really am optimistic that every first-year investment banker, consultant, FP&A accountant, whatever, will be materially more efficient because they will be using these tools. And I hope I'm not wrong.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I definitely hear the opposite side of the argument as well. Dylan Patel from SemiAnalysis is talking about first-year software engineers struggling to get a job right now. But ultimately, if these first-year software engineers are insanely productive, they've learned the tools, it just seems like a no-brainer that one of the large tech companies will hire them. Maybe we're just not seeing that right now. I don't know.
I think there is a period of indigestion, but I will tell you, I have 6 MIT interns to the right of me, all of which are 19. I just hired one of them, and he's not even going back to school because he's a freak of nature at using AI. It's just a new school. I mean, it's a new school. It's a new way of learning. It's a new way of doing things. And, you ask like what young people learn to do, like they should become very good at using these tools. And I promise you, Microsoft would hire the guy I just hired, and they wish they had 1 million of him, right? It becomes like, how good are you at using these tools? I have a 2-year-old daughter and another one on the way. And like, all I'm going to focus on is making sure that they can have, as much access to the frontier as possible, so that they can build important skills. They'll just look radically different. When spreadsheets came, they were the greatest job displacer in like human history. Actually, Excel was. People were manually, record keeping, doing double book entries. It was probably a lot of indigestion for a couple of years, and people learned how to use Excel. And some people suffered more than others, but the net positive was dramatic.
So I asked our previous guest, Hiten Shaw, about what he wants to teach his children. And I didn't know you had a 2-year-old daughter. So we are parents of young ones together. And so I'm going to ask you the same question. Given everything that's changing with artificial intelligence, what do you think are the best skills to learn, and for you as a parent to teach your children so that they are most likely to be successful in the future?
Yeah, it's a super important question. I don't have the answer, of course. I think we saw another question in the thread, which is like, how do we make sure AGI benefits everybody? You know what they should be doing? All of these labs should have gone public a long time ago. Every single person should have been able to invest in these people. It's a massive failure of these companies that they have not done that when they've had the chance to benefit AGI for all. So I mean, I think systemically there's things we should do to benefit my daughter, your kids, everybody. Now, in terms of the skill sets and capabilities, I think it's the most important time to be technical. I think everyone should be technical. I actually think if you're not technical as like a 20-year-old, it's because your parents failed you. If you're not technical after 20, it's because you're failing yourself, right? Like, there's different levels of learning skill sets, and you should be learning. And it's not as simple as using ChatGPT, but it's, given every time a model gets released or updated, what's the quickest, most awesome thing I can use and do with it? And like this will be slightly gatekept amongst different age brackets, of course, and like things you want to make sure that your kids are safe on. But they should be learning to use tools. I actually think the neuroplasticity of kids unlocks things in AI that I couldn't believe. Like we have a PhD computational neuroscientist on my team here in Shortcut, who is like one of the best context engineers in the world. And then he's looking to the left of him, and we have this 19-year-old who's like quickly hitting his level. And we're like, how is this even possible? It's because, you can only possibly have 2 or 3 years of experience, and that means more at 19, and it will mean more at 5.
And when you say they need to be technical, they need to learn to be technical, you're not necessarily explicitly talking about software engineering. You're talking about learning about the tools, which it takes a deeply technical brain to do, right?
Yeah. I don't mean that you need to like learn how to set up your Python environment like on your IDE. But I mean like you should be whipping up an app on Lovable and trying to like sell lemonade on the street. Like this is that's more in the line of what I'm saying.
All right, Nico, I want to thank you so much for joining us. Congrats on the success. Congrats on the progress. If you want to check out Nico, you can check him out on Twitter at Nico Christie. I'll drop that in the chat right now. And if you want to try Shortcut, I believe there's a wait list still. Try Shortcut.ai.
No, it just got released. Try Shortcut.ai. Anyone can use it.
Try Shortcut.ai. Nico, thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Good seeing you. All right. So we have one last thing to talk about today. We are going to give an AGI race update. So I want to talk about a bunch of different models that were released this week and last week, and they almost are all open source, which is extremely exciting to me. So first, Qwen 3. Alex, if you can pull up Qwen 3. So the team at Qwen is absolutely cooking. They have released so many models over these last few weeks, different variations, different flavors of the Qwen 3 family of models. This one now, Qwen 3 30B, A3B, that means 3 billion active parameters. It is a thinking model. It is medium-sized, and it performs really, really well. So this is one of those models that you might be able to run on your local machine. So that has 256K token context window, extendable to 1 million. That seems to be the theme with the Qwen 3 series of models, and Kimi K2 as well, if I remember correctly. Good at tool use, competitive with larger models. GLM 4.5, Alex, if you can bring that up. GLM 4.5 was released. And by the way, I've made testing videos on both of these models. Check it out on my channel. GLM 4.5 also released. An absolutely incredible model, performed really, really well. This was released by z.ai. You can try it for free. I think the URL is chat.z.ai. Dot is asking which model is best for coding. I think you just got to test them all. I tested this model GLM 4.5, and it was extremely good at coding. Lalo says solid models. Absolutely. So then we had a mystery model, Horizon Alpha. And of course, that is the rumored OpenAI open source model, Horizon Alpha. I also tested that, made a video about it. It was also incredible at coding. Now, here's the thing. I didn't actually plug any of these tools into agentic coding frameworks like Cursor, Windsurf, Factory, any of these. So I haven't tested it like that. These were all direct, like zero-shot prompting. And they're really, really good. Then we had Deep Cogito. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. Deep Cogito come out, I believe, yesterday. July 31st, yesterday. So today we're releasing 4 hybrid reasoning models, 70B, 109B, MOE, which is mixture of experts, 405B, and a massive 671 billion MOE model under open license, another open source license. And they're taking a different approach. these models are able to, let's see. I'm not going to try to describe it. Let me scroll down a little bit, Alex, and I'll read it directly from here, because it's super interesting how they're thinking about it. These models are built on our work on building superintelligence using iterated distillation and amplification. So in particular, we scale the model's intelligence prior by the model internalizing the reasoning process using iterative policy improvement, rather than simply, if you could just show more right there, doing RL after the fact. I think that's what it goes to. Right. Rather than at inference time, searching longer at inference time. So this is in line with the same approach as AlphaGo AlphaZero applied to natural language. So again, the theme of this episode really seems to be removing the human from the loop, allowing the models to have their own playground, to learn on their own, give them as much compute as they need. And as of this morning, I know a lot of you I see in the comments, I see Gemini 2.5 Pro DeepThink IMO edition. This is the International Math Olympiad gold medalist model, is now available for anybody to use. Can we pause for a second and just understand how crazy that is? So Logan Kilpatrick, Gemini DeepThink, our state-of-the-art model with parallel thinking that won the IMO gold medal, is now available in the Gemini app for Ultra subscribers. Now for Ultra, it's $250 a month. I do it because, of course, I have to test all of these models, but you also get a whole bunch of other things. You think you get YouTube Premium, you get 30 terabytes of storage. Google does not pay me anything. I'm just a fan of that plan. And if you get it, you also get this state-of-the-art Math Olympiad model, which is just nuts to think about. And so Logan's asking, should he put it in the Gemini API next? Now, we've also had a text-to-image model. So from Black Forest Labs, if you can share the Flux Kriya Dev, Alex. Today, we are releasing Flux 1 Kriya Dev, another state-of-the-art open weights Flux model. I am so happy to see all of these open source models coming to market. Developed in collaboration with Kriya AI, this model is focused on images with unique aesthetics, no AI look, no blown out highlights, just natural detail. And if you look, these do look incredible. And the best part, it is open source. And last, we have a new #1 on ARC 2. This is ARC 2, not ARC 3. So the ARC AGI prize, Giotto AI scoring a 21.6%. I don't know if there's more information below that, Alex. Okay, so no, if you want to just show, if you want to check out the leaderboards, you can go to the ARC AGI website. We'll drop it in the chat. But things are heating up. Open source is absolutely catching up. It feels like these last 2 weeks have been incredible to see. A lot of open source models out of China that have been really near the frontier, more close to the frontier than we've seen with previous models. So the last thing, I just want to say a couple closing things. Check out our newsletter, forwardfuture.ai. We'll drop that in the description below. I want to thank our two guests, Hiten Shaw and Nico Christie, for joining us. We'll drop all of their links down below. Yep, check us out, forwardfuture.ai. Best newsletter out there. We have a bunch of originals. We summarize the news from the week. I want to also thank Alex for being behind the scenes, making sure everything goes smoothly. So thank you very much. Thanks for everybody to join us. And I'll see you next week. Bye.